Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back in to another Sunday Coffee with OTRAMM. This week's going to be a bit short and a bit different. I tried a new camera option this week. I got a shoulder mount for a little GoPro knockoff, so I could just wear that, all week and clip together, short clips of everything we did throughout the week. It turns out I didn't have the angle set quite right, and most of the footage ended up looking at my feet or the floor in front of where I was working. And I didn't think you guys would want to watch 10-15 minutes of the floor of my shop, so I deleted all that footage. I got a little bit of it that turned out all right. I tore down an FJ60 transfer case for rebuild, and most of the footage for that was okay, and I got a little bit of electrical troubleshooting on a 100 series caught, and some sandblasting. But pretty much everything else was unusable. So as far as what we did at the shop this week, we did a 190K service on a 100 series, so timing belt, water pump, heater tees. We ended up doing hoses and a radiator on that one. And then we also did just a fluid service on another 100 series. And normally when a 100 series comes through the shop, they are just complete rusty messes. The one we did the fluid service on was the absolute cleanest 100 series I have ever seen. I should have taken pictures. You could still see the chrome finish on all the bolts on the frame and the suspension. It was like it had been kept in a time capsule for the last 20 years. It was amazing. And I talked to the owner. Apparently it was a Texas truck. So that must be the place to get 100 series. So it's kind of sad that that one's on the East Coast now and is going to get rusted out. But yeah, so we did those at the shop, did some more work on the 80 series bumper. And it was a little bit of a slow week, or a short week. We had snow Thursday, so that put a damper on things. But yeah, I think what else is new? We got OTRAMM t-shirts. The first batch finally came in. So I'll show you guys those. So we got the OTRAMM dog logo on the front. And then the full color OTRAMM logo on the back. And I'll put a link down in the description for those. I'm excited they finally came in. I tried doing a set a couple of years ago and I just couldn't get the graphics right. And we did one shirt and it just didn't look great, so we hadn't done them again. So those are in and up for order, so I'm super excited about that. We had another person pledge on our Patreon page, so that was super exciting. Huge shout out to everybody that's supporting us on Patreon. Yeah, I think that's about all that's new for this week, so I'll get into the video that was able to be salvaged. Okay, so we're pulling the 62 drivetrain out of the parts washer, or 60 series rather, so we can start tearing it down. And we'll pull the drive flanges off real quick. And we'll start putting everything in our labeled Ziploc baggies. Get the rear output housing pulled off. Pull the retainer for the idler shaft. Then we can pull the rear cover. And the 2-4 indicator switch. And we can pop out the shift detent spring and ball. Grab my magnetic screwdriver. Then we can take off the side cover. Pop the rear cover off. And normally I would do this all on my transmission bench, but the 5-speed and 62 case are still up there, and I didn't feel like moving them to lift this up there. So we'll tear it down on the floor, and then I'll move the other one once Crash is back on Monday. So normally I wouldn't tear these down on the floor, but since everything's going through the parts washer again anyway, it doesn't really matter. And once we get these 17s out, we can take the back case half off. We get a nice shot of Blue walking around waiting to ask me a question. Take the rear output nut from the trans off. And this will all get rebuilt with new bearings and seals when we put it on the new 5-speed. Then we're going to take the high-low shift detent out. Don't lose the little ball bearings. Then we can take the input gear off, and here I'm shaking it to make sure the splines are good. Then the high-low gear. And the idler. And its shaft. And thrust washer. Now we can start loading everything back up into the parts washer to get all the inside cleaned. And we'll load all that up and do a cycle. And then there's the steel parts already came out of the parts washer, so we're going to start blasting those and get them ready for paint. And I was wondering why the blaster was acting so weak. If you look closely at the nozzle, you can see it's worn all the way through. I ended up changing the nozzle right after I shot this. We'll blast these up, get them cleaned up, ready for paint, so everything looks good when we put it back together. This blast cabinet makes it so nice for quickly cleaning parts. And then on something like this, we blast all the external surfaces, but if you're going to blast things like this, make sure you don't hit the seal surface on the inside, because it'll rough it up and make the seals wear faster. And this goes way faster with a good tip in it. Didn't realize this one was that bad when I started shooting the video. And then same thing, we'll blast the other one here. And then this one, this 100 series, didn't have rear heat, and we pulled the wiring to the rear fan and weren't getting any voltage, even though the fuse was good. So I'm pulling out the fuse panel so I can get to the relays on the back. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to put the relays on the back side of this panel. And then I was expecting to find a bad relay, and what we actually ended up finding was there was no relay. Right next to that blue one to the right should be the fan relay for the rear heater, and it didn't have anything. So we ended up putting a new relay in, and the fan works. Okay, so I know it was short this week and a little bit choppy cut together to get usable footage. Hopefully I will master this soon and we'll have better footage for next week. But anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't yet, subscribe below. And if you'd like, check out our Patreon link, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.